Hi, my name is Stuart Lynch, and this is the second of 5 videos where I show you how you can add a UIImagePickerController to your SwiftUI app so that you can both select a photo from your Photos album or take a photo with your device's camera. In this video, we'll be verifying our authorization and camera availability and use an error enum to use for all of our errors and throwing functions. Now before I get started, I just want to ask that if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you ring the bell to be notified of future videos. Comments and likes are always appreciated. If you care to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If this is something you want to learn, then keep watching. If you're following along with this video, you can continue to use your code from the last video. However, if you're just starting here, I provided the completed project from the last video, and you can download it from the link in the description below. Before we get to an alert for our users, let's first create an enum that will deal with the possible errors and provide an error string that we could use as the alert message. So in the picker file, we'll create this enum and we'll call it picker error, and make sure that it conforms to the error protocol as well as localized error. For our first case, we'll create one called unavailable, which will handle our case where the device not support a camera. Now for the other cases, well, what are the possibilities? What we're looking for is what is called the authorization status, and this is part of the AV capture device class. So first we'll need to import AV Foundation. Now if we check out the documentation on this, we can scroll down to the section on verifying authorization, and you can see that there is a function called authorization status for the AV media type. And this is an enum called AV authorization status so that we can drill down on it. Here you can see that there are 4 cases: not determined, restricted, denied, and authorized. We only want to proceed, of course, with our camera picker if it's authorized, so we can create cases for the other ones. We do not have to create one for the not determined status because that's our default and your device will automatically prompt you. And you'll be required to either accept or reject. So let's just create one for our 2 other cases. One for restricted, and one for denied. If we happen to be in one of those cases, we'll want to present an alert. So I'm going to create a localized error description for those 3 cases, including the one for unavailable. And we'll create this property as a computed property called error description, and we'll switch on the case, returning an NS localized string that reflects the issue. For the case that our device is unavailable, I can return an NS localized string using the string, "There is no available camera on this device." And for now, I'm not going to localize for other languages, so I'll just set the comment as an empty string. I'll need to do the same thing for the other 2 cases as well. So let me just copy this NS localized string and edit it. And I'll fix that typo in the first one in the meantime. For restricted, this means that access to the device has been restricted by the owner of the device. So here I can say, "You are not allowed to access media capture devices." For the denied case, it means that you must have turned off or denied access. So we'll have to say, "You have specifically denied permission for media capture. Please open permissions, privacy, camera, and grant access for this application." Well, now that we have new cases to check for, we can update our check permissions function. And instead of returning a Boolean, we can throw an error, and that error will be one of our cases. So if our camera source is unavailable, then we'll need to check for the auth status. So we can define a constant that is auth status that provides the AV capture device's authorization status for the AV media type of video. And then we can switch on the returned enum, which is that auth status, and match and throw the corresponding picker error. So if it's denied, we'll throw the picker error .denied. If it's restricted, we'll throw picker error .restricted. Now, if it's not denied and not restricted, it must be authorized or undetermined. So for the default, we can break, as it will then have a function that will either proceed or prompt for permission. In the case that the source is not available, then that'll be our else case in our if statement, so we can throw the picker error .unavailable. Finally now then, once we have received an error, we're going to want to show an alert. And in iOS 15, we'll show an alert based on two things: a Boolean is presented and another non-optional argument. I have an entire video on this new type of alert, so if you want more detail, I recommend that you watch that video. I'll provide a link in the description below. This enum then is a good location to create that object, and I'll call it camera error type. It's going to have three properties. The first is going to be let error, and it will be a picker.picker error. That's what we just defined. The second will be a computed property that we'll call message, and we'll simply use the message in our alert that was thrown, and that's the error's localized description. Then the third property will be a button on the alert. So we'll need to change the import from UIKit to SwiftUI. And then we can create that button, and it'll simply be a button with no action, but a label of OK and a role of cancel. All we need to do now is to implement that alert. If we return to our view model, we'll see it now has an error, but we'll fix that in just a second. First will be a show camera alert. That is a Boolean property initialized as false. And the next is our camera error, which is an optional of type picker.camera error type. We'll need to now fix our show picker function because the check permissions function no longer returns a Boolean, it throws an error instead. So we'll need to use a do catch block within here. And then we'll check as before if source is equal to camera. If so, we'll try to execute the picker's check permission function. And if that does not throw an error, we'll set our show picker to true and present the picker. If it does, however, we have that catch block where we can set show camera alert to true. And then we'll create an instance of our camera error type and assign it to camera error. And that error will have that thrown error. So we can delete that older code now. Now the error is telling us that we need to be more specific about our error. So we'll have to cast it as a picker.picker error. Now in content view then, right after our sheet method, we can create an alert with the title of error, and the is presented is based on our view model's camera alert, and it's bound to it. And it'll be presenting the view model's camera error, which provides me an instance of a camera error that will call camera error in the closure and then present the camera error button. And the message itself will be the camera errors message in a text view. Now, when you test in the preview or in the simulator and try to access the camera, you are presented with an alert saying that there is no camera on this device. So let's check out our authorization. Let's switch over to my iPhone now and run it. Now, I deleted the version that was on here first, so this is a first run on this device. When I tap the camera button, I get that initial request for permission, as I said, and I can accept it and take a photo. That's just as before. There are no errors. Let me swipe over now, though, and go to my Settings, Privacy, Camera section. And again, I'm going to disable or turn off that permission. If I return to the app now and tap on the camera button, I'll now get an alert that tells me that I have explicitly denied permission, and it tells me to go back and set it if I want to take a photo. And when I do that, I'm good to go. Now, these two videos, I've given you the resources to add a photo and camera picker to any one of your apps by simply using the same enums and structs that I've included here. You just need to add the two UI view representables if you want to have that zoom, and the picker enum. And your view model is going to need a binding to an image, all of these properties, and this function here. With that in place then, any view that uses this view model can implement the sheet and alert to display and present the selected image on your view in a zoomable format. In the next video, if you're interested in continuing, we'll look at how you can add data persistence by saving our images to the Documents folder, along with a JSON file that will store the name that we assign and a reference to the image stored in the folder so that we can add, remove, or update messages and have them persist between launches. We'll also add some eye candy to our UI. This whole process is going to take 3 videos because we're going to try and ensure that we'll cover all options to make it a bona fide, usable user experience.